Hey guys, I want to make a video today to show you how to connect your Axe-Fx digitally to your interface, but wait, hold on, I'll be right back. Okay, that's better. So today I'm going to show you how to connect your Axe-Fx digitally via SPDIF versus just analog. SPDIF is just a type of connection that uses coaxial cable with RCA connectors to transmit audio signals digitally. So I'm going to show you a little schematic I drew up for both the analog and the digital connections, but first let's go over the gear. For my interface, I'm using a Focusrite 18i20. It's a little overkill in my current setup, but you can use any interface that has SPDIF connections. To do this, you're going to need to pick up some SPDIF cables, and I'll have some links below with the other gear I use. Just look down there. You're also going to want at least 3 instrument cables, but I recommend 4 if you want to get a DI and a stereo output from your Axe-Fx if you go just the analog route. Now if you have cables laying around, great, but if you buy them for this, I recommend keeping them as short as possible. That goes for the SPDIF cables as well, so all the links below are going to be for shorter cables, around 10 feet or less, but all the links have options for longer cables if you need them. Okay, so the Axe-Fx. I'm using the Axe-Fx II XL+, but you can connect pretty much any other high-end model like the Helix or the Kemper to your interface digitally. Now it is worth noting that the AX8 only has SPDIF out, but I'm still going to show you a way to get a DI from your AX8. And that's the main thing I want to show you. We're going to go over how to get a DI and your process signal from your Axe-Fx via digital or analog connections or a combination of both. And we'll go over how to reamp that in the next video. Alright, so here's the first schematic. This is the regular way that you would connect your Axe-Fx using output 1, and it's the most common. It's perfect for playing, such as in a live situation. And here's just a regular patch in Axe-Edit. But you may want to record and get a DI at the same time. A DI is just the direct input from your guitar, and it's useful for when you want to reamp or see the transients of your guitar parts in your DAW. You can set up your Axe-Fx to get a DI this way by connecting the input in Axe-Edit straight to the output and setting the balance so you get a mono process signal on one side and a DI out the other side. In this case, you have the process signal on output 2 and the DI on output 4, and I hard pan them left and right as you can see. Then just go change the routing in your interface, Focusrite control in this case. So here, I just routed the process signal to input 7 on my interface, so it's mono and plays in both monitors, and the DI is in input 8 and it's muted. Then just set up your I/O and your DAW accordingly. But the downside to connecting everything like this is that you can't reamp without buying a separate reamp box, which is fine, and if you can buy a good reamp box then I recommend that. But you can connect your Axe-Fx so you can reamp without a dedicated unit. Now quickly, I'll just mention that you can use the effects loop block to get a DI and still get a stereo output from your Axe-Fx by just running the input straight into the effects loop block. Here's an example in Axe-Edit and in Focusrite control. So it's a stereo input on 7 and 8 for the processed and the muted DI again, but on input 6 this time. But instead of doing all of that, you can just set the output 2 echo in your I/O settings on your Axe-Fx to input 1 and it would do the same thing without using the effects send block. But if you use the effects send block in a preset, it will automatically turn off this function, so despite getting a stereo output, you still couldn't get a DI while running an amp in a cab with full cable method anyways. Now you could get more complicated and use both outputs of your effects send to get a DI and still use full cable method, or even use both of your effects send outputs, both of your effects return inputs, and both of your main outs to use full cable method with 2 separate amps, but that would be crazy. That's not even full cables, that's like 7. But whatever, that's not what I want to show you, and you still couldn't reamp that way. Okay, so here's where SPDIF comes in. For the physical side, connect the SPDIF out of your Axe-Fx to the SPDIF in on your interface, and the out from your interface to the in on the Fractal. And for the software side, first set your main input source on your Axe-Fx to analog, input 1, like normal, then make sure that the word clock is set to auto, which should be the default as well. And under SPDIF/AES select, make sure SPDIF is selected, which again should be the default, and set the USB digi out to output 1. Next, set your interface sample rate to 48 kHz, which is what the Axe-Fx runs at, and set the clock source to internal. This setup is pretty much just the digital equivalence of the stereo analog connections, the first schematic I showed you, but you get a stereo output with just one cable. The second cable from the interface SPDIF out to the in on the Fractal is for reamping. You could use the same trick as before where you send the input to the output in Axe-Edit and hard pan the dry and process signals to get a DI digitally and then reamp digitally. This is how I would connect the AX8. But for everything else, you could get a DI with analog if you want the stereo output through SPDIF by using the effects send again with an instrument cable, but you'll want to reamp with a dedicated reamp box in that case. A reamp box converts a balanced low impedance signal into an unbalanced high impedance signal. So if you want to reamp with the Axe-Fx, you're going to either need to get a reamp box, or you're going to want to get both the DI signal and the reamp signal through SPDIF. You can try different ways to see what works best for you, but if you work with the DI and reamping all digitally, then you don't need to mess with levers. The DI will go into the Fractal exactly as if you were playing the guitar. It was already converted from analog to digital on the way in, it doesn't need to be converted again this way. Note, I recommend not going from the output on your interface to the input on your Axe-Fx. It will work, but it's not the same as a direct signal from your guitar. That's when you would normally get a reamp box. So I recommend either using SPDIF and running a mono process signal on one side and the dry on the other like I already showed you, or running your process signal via analog, leaving the SPDIF for the DI and reamping. And that last way is what I'm currently running. Here's how to connect everything. You still have to set the levers right going into your interface when using analog, whereas the levers for your SPDIF are fixed. That's why I recommend getting a DI through SPDIF. But this way is the most flexible. You get a DI via SPDIF by setting the digi out to input that you can later use to reamp, and you get a stereo output for your process signal if you want that. Then just set up your interface so you get the analog inputs from the main outs on the Fractal, and so you get the DI through SPDIF. Okay, that's it. I find this setup to be the most efficient so far, and you don't need a DI or a reamp box. Now in the future, I probably will pick up a good reamp box when I buy another tube amp, but if you're just using an Axe-Fx or a similar modeler, this method works great. But for the sake of brevity, I'm gonna make another video on how to reamp using this exact workflow. So click subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when I upload it. Leave a comment on how you like to connect your Axe-Fx, and hit the like button if you learn new information. You've been awesome. Thanks for watching.